Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. With us is Richard Lavallo. He is the Legal Director for Disability Rights Texas. And David Slayton is Administrative Director for the State Office of Court Administration. And both are here to talk about, we would have to say an obscure but a nationally groundbreaking state law that was passed here this last session over guardianship. And, you know, when we're talking about guardianship, David, I'll start with you. What are we talking about?
You know, lots of times adults at some point may lose capacity to make decisions for themselves, and they need someone to help them make those decisions. And when that happens, of course, one of the things that is an option for them is to go to a court and to the court to appoint someone to be able to make all those decisions. The key to know about guardianship is it is the most restrictive alternative to decision-making on their own, and at the point where guardianship is created, the individual loses all those rights to make those decisions, whether it be on where to live or to get married or even financial decisions, and someone else is given that authority to do that for them.
Before I have Richard jump in here, let's look at some statistics when we're talking about those who are baby boomers, for example, right? And this is some statistics that combined from two different sources here, but 1 out of 3 of us are 50 plus right now in America that are baby boomers. So 1 out of 3 baby boomers right now. 1 out of 5 will be 65 plus by 2030. A quarter of the workforce will be 55 plus by just 2020, right down the road here, and 20% of the workforce will be 65 plus by 2030. So, David, what do these statistics tell you as it relates to guardianship?
You know, one of the things that's most challenging for the court system and for us as a state right now is the fact that there are so many individuals that are getting that age. And what we know just by the aging process is that some people are going to reach that point where they become incapacitated. What we've seen in just the past 4 years is a tremendous growth in the number of guardianships in the state of Texas. And what we know right now is there are over 50,000 of these active guardianships in the state, continuing to grow. And so we've got to make sure that we're doing our best to provide individuals in society with choices, as well as making sure the courts are prepared for this tremendous growth.
Now, Richard, you represent the disabilities community, and it's interesting to see that there was quite a diverse coalition of organizations and stakeholders that came to really push for this law. But it's not just about those who are over 50, is it?
That's correct. The statistics involving people with disabilities is pretty amazing. 51% of the guardianships in Texas involve individuals that are 18 years old, that are initiated at that age.
Just becoming adults.
And what happens typically is that the school districts tell the parents of kids as they turn 18 that they need to get guardianships. And so typically what happens to families is that they go out and they get a full guardianship over their child that just turned 18. And as David had said, it's really restrictive, and it strips the individual with a disability their rights to make decisions about where they live, work, where they want to go to school, and all those important civil rights that we all have.
So when we're talking about some of these restrictions, I mean, clearly guardianship is there to protect, right? There's a reason for it. So you're not advocating not having guardianship, but with some limits. And tell us about what the law does to try to, mitigate some of the problems associated with it.
Well, I think very often people have perceptions of people with disabilities and assume just because they have a disability they're incapacitated and they can't make decisions. And I think that the most important part of this law is that it requires the court to look at whether or not a person needs a guardianship and whether or not they have access to supports and services. And in Texas, we've developed a lot of new programs that serve people with disabilities that allow them to live integrated into the community with supports with caseworking and small group homes and things like that. And so now the courts are required to consider that before they appoint a guardian, which I think is very significant.
So the terminology that I hear, supported decision-making, and I'll let both of you kind of jump in on that, but what are we talking about then? Because is it more than just alternatives to guardianship? I mean, what are we
Well,
really
supported decision-making from the disability community is significant, and it's considered by the Texas legislature as one alternative to guardianship. Okay. But Texas is the first state in the union to establish a supported decision-making process. And what it does is it allows a person with a disability to establish a relationship with a trusted friend, relative, or someone else they know who can assist them in making decisions about where they live, work, medical care, what have you. And so it's different than a guardianship, and it's different than a power of attorney where you delegate the authority to a third party. This allows a person with a disability to be assisted in making the decisions, just like we do with our kids. and providing that type of guidance and support.
David, what else would you want people to know about this new law? As we said, I mean, it is groundbreaking nationally, nothing like it in the other 49 states, but yet not a lot of people know about it.
Right. You know, I think in addition to the supported decision-making piece, one of the things that the law does is it makes sure that judges and attorneys consider all the alternatives. There's a laundry list of alternatives to guardianship, and we want to make sure that a guardianship, if it's put in place, as it is the most restrictive, is the most appropriate one. So it has them look at all of them. It also provides, requires judges to take a look at whether or not an individual can make the decision about where they live. Previous to this law, that wasn't a requirement. We also require attorneys to get additional training to make sure that when they're bringing these cases into the court system, that they know what they're doing so there's not issues created from that, and making sure that that all those things are considered whenever we're looking at a guardianship, so that we make sure we're protecting the rights of individuals, but we're also protecting them where they need help and need assistance, so that the guardianships are appropriate when we put them in place.
As I indicated, this was a diverse coalition of groups, stakeholders, organizations, and recently you were honored for your involvement in it. David, what got you into this mix?
You know, it's kind of interesting. It's many a times it's a personal story, and for us, for me personally, it was family member, and I thought, you know, I know my family is very loving and wants to take care of people, but what about family members where that's not the case, and what does the system look like? And as we began to look at the system across the state, we realized there were some shortcomings, and so the Texas Judicial Council, which is the policymaking body of the judicial branch and chaired by the Chief Justice Nathan Hecht, really said, let's take a look at this and study it. After about an 18-month period of studying it, these were the things that were in House Bill 39 were ultimately what came from that study, and working with groups like with Richard and the other coalition members really helped us to sort of bring some of these issues to light, and I think made for a really good bill at the end of the day.
Richard, I'll give you kind of the last word, but David could jump in here too. What's next? Because just because there's a law in place doesn't mean that people follow it or that everybody knows about it. And also, I know there may be a phone number you want to share as well.
Yeah, there's several things that are going on. First of all, what we're trying to do is educate judges and lawyers that practice in guardianship cases about the new reforms. And then we're also going out and doing extensive training of advocates, family members, and people with disabilities about supported decision-making in these alternatives. And we're working with the University of Texas Law School and other law schools and pro bono lawyers to assist people in entering these supported decision-making agreements. So if anyone would like information regarding supported decision-making, they can contact Disability Rights at 512-454-4816.
All right. Fascinating discussion because this impacts everyone, right? There's no age group, no limits to how this will have an impact. Thanks to both of you for giving us the information.
Thank you very much.
And back with more Capital tonight after the break.